Let me know when we're ready. Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Mike Clare. I am the Associate Director for Public Policy at Memorial University's Harris Center. Delighted to be your host here this evening. Delighted to welcome those of you who are with me here in the College of the North Atlantic campus in Stephenville, as well as those who are watching on the web. So welcome everybody. We've entitled our session this evening, Toward Thriving Rural Regions, Stories from Southwestern Newfoundland, because we want to focus our attention on rural areas of this province, and in particular on the triangle that ranges from Burgeo on the south coast, west to Port aux Basques, and then north to Stephenville. There are some interesting activities going on in this part of the world, activities that attest to the creativity, the optimism, and the hard work of many local people. We will be hearing from a couple of them this evening, and I'm sure we'll hear from many more during the discussion session that will follow. I'll ask each of our three speakers, they'll say a bit more about the projects that they're working on. Our first speaker is a university researcher. Another is an employee of government who works in economic development. And the other two are members of a volunteer-based organization working in the tourism and recreation sector. Hopefully we'll hear from some members of the private sector as well during the discussion session. For those of you watching the webcast, you will see a text box somewhere on your screen. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, simply type it in the text box and one of us here will read it out for the panel to react to. We'll intersperse the emailed comments with those from this audience. The video of tonight's session will be archived on the Harris Center's website in a day or so. So feel free to watch it again and refer to your friends. Our objective tonight is to gain a better understanding of the forces affecting rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and to see how people in this part of the province are reacting to these forces and helping to create a sustainable region. So without further ado, let me bring in the panel. I'll introduce them all at once. And here we go. Kelly Vaadin. Dr. Kelly Vaadin is Associate Professor Research at the Environmental Policy Institute at the Grenfell campus of Memorial University in Corner Brook. Kelly has been actively involved in community and regional development research, policy and practice in Canada, in Canadian rural communities for more than 2 decades, including projects related to collaborative governance and community involvement in resource management, regional planning, and developing sustainable local economies. Greg Noonan is the president of the Whaleback Nordic Ski Club. Originally from Gander, he moved to the Bay St. George region in 1998. Peter Sutherland is the vice president of Whaleback Nordic Ski Club. He grew up in Lewisport and moved to the region in 1979. The Whaleback Nordic Ski Club is located in Stephenville and has a membership of 340 members. The club has been an enthusiastic leader in the promotion of active, healthy living, and it strives to be good steward of the environment. The club also has a history of participating in local environmental discussions. Mark Felix has been working in the field of community economic development for the past 35 years, 10 years at the grassroots level as development coordinator with the Port-au-Port Economic Development Association, and the past 25 years with the provincial government as economic development officer with the Department of Business, Tourism, Culture, and Rural Development. So it's my pleasure to present these 4 eminent speakers, and please help me in welcoming them and Kelly Vaadin to the podium.
Unusual, but I had to have at least 2. But really what I wanted to do is frame my discussion a little bit in some regional development theory and academic literature. But the focus is on stories from Southwestern Newfoundland. I've done a little bit of research over the years and looked at a few different examples of stories from Southwestern Newfoundland. So I'm going to try to bring those in and frame them in terms of regional development. But I would really rely on the panelists who follow me and the others in the room to supplement what I would say about the initiatives that are happening in the region and to tell us about other things that I may not know about. But I've been working as principal investigator for the last 5 years on a project looking at regional development models across Canada. And the title of the project is Canadian Regional Development, a critical review of theory, practice, and potentials. And we worked in 4 different provinces: Newfoundland, Labrador, Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. And our 2 case study provinces in Newfoundland and Labrador were the Kittiwake region and the Northeast Coast and the Northern Peninsula. So not this particular region, but I can certainly see in what I do know about the region some of the elements of this new regionalist approach, which the literature talks about a shift that began to happen in the 1990s towards a different form, a greater emphasis on the region, or at least a re-emphasis on the region as an important scale for development, and on a different approach to regional development that's more open. You see the characteristics of the new regionalism on the right, more about shared decision making, multiple levels of government working together, multiple sectors working together, about collaboration and trying to foster sort of bottom-up, place-based approaches to development versus a more top-down, provincial and federally driven kind of approach. Now that's the ideal in the literature, and one of the things we found in our research was that it's often the new regionalism is often not practiced the way the ideal would suggest, and that we really have a mix of older approaches to regional development and these new kinds of models. We broke down the new regionalism into 5 major themes, and so I would have thought today is I'd talk a little bit about some of the examples of initiatives that I know are happening in Southwestern Newfoundland and Labrador that resonate with me in terms of the themes of new regionalism. And so the 5 themes that we looked at and that you could see in the literature, which could be described as good practices, if not best practices in regional development, were 1, collaborative multi-level governance, and I've already talked about that a bit, that multiple players are coming together to plan for the future, to make decisions, and to put those plans and policies and strategies into action. Rural-urban interactions, so that the regional development efforts include both rural communities and urban centers, recognizing their interdependencies and working, again, collaboratively. Thinking about this region, I guess Stephenville is the urban, and certainly I do see a lot of examples of regional initiatives that include Stephenville and outlying communities, so certainly I think rural-urban interactions are in play here. What I'm less certain about is the interactions between maybe Southwestern region and Corner Brook, for example, and whether there's maybe more opportunities for collaboration in the larger Western region that could take advantage of some of those rural-urban interdependencies. Third area is within this new regionalism is an emphasis on place and identifying what are the unique assets of particular places that we can build upon and strategically leverage, combining those assets. So again, I think there's some evidence of that here. Integrated approaches to development, so recognizing interdependencies between regional development often is very focused on regional economic development, but recognizing not only the multiple players and trying to bring them together in an integrated way, but also the multiple aspects of development, thinking of development from a holistic kind of well-being approach is another feature. And finally, a dominant theme in the new regionalism literature is learning and innovation. So recognizing the need to be continually changing, that we're living in a changing world, that we need to be adapting, we need to be reaching out, looking beyond our communities and regions to what's happening elsewhere, where are the opportunities and ideas that we might avail of, and that recognizing that we need to be innovative, to have learning communities, learning individuals, learning communities, and that's where I think we have a great example here in this region. So those are the 5 themes that I wanted to use to frame the discussion a bit, and the examples that I've seen that I wanted to raise here from the region are, I guess I'll start maybe in this bottom corner. In terms of place-based development and also integrated approaches to development, I had a student that I co-supervised last year in the Master's of Environmental Science program at St. John's campus, who looked at the proposed National Marine Conservation Area on the southern coast, and really driven out of from some interest in Burgeo, who were really thinking about, well, what is the potential for tourism development linked to conservation of our our unique natural assets. And I think that discussion is still ongoing. What he really did is look at, Brandon Ward was his name, did a baseline study looking at the perceived costs and benefits of a national marine conservation area. And there was significant concern from the residents identified about the impact such a protected area would have on livelihoods and ways of life. So there was an identified need for more education and discussion and engagement around that idea. But I think the important point is that the Burgeo leadership is recognizing the importance of the natural assets of the area and having considerable discussion about how to protect and build on that natural asset. And I'd like to hear more from people, but I know there's been initiatives around fisheries conservation in the region as well, and certainly some wetland stewardship areas and other kinds of conservation initiatives in the area that I think are quite notable and shows the kind of integrated place-based thinking. Another area where I've been doing some work is in drinking water. So over the last couple of years, myself and others at the Environmental Policy Institute have been doing work related to drinking water systems. And when we did a province-wide study, the Port-au-Port East area was one of our case study areas. And what we heard there was, first of all, that the community was doing a pretty good job of managing its water systems, good records and leak detection, these kinds of things, not the same kind of management problems that we saw in other places. But the community was experiencing shortages at times with their drinking water supply, which was affecting development potential. So they're very much aware of the link between good water systems and the potential for residential and industrial development. So that, again, not thinking of water on its own as something separate from other aspects of development. And then more recently, we're working with Wendy and others at Black Duck Brook so Black Duck Brook doesn't have a municipal government with that water, human resources that are devoted to managing water that a municipality has. So it sort of highlights some of the challenges associated with smaller communities and drinking water. But Chez Le Français, French Center, and Rede recognized a problem with drinking water in the community, some of the households and the community center in the community with the rotten egg smell, and reached out to the university to say, is there something you can do to help us look at our water challenges, which I think, again, is a very proactive kind of initiative to take. So we're going to recognize them for that. And also involved this collaborative governance idea that we're going to reach out to the university. And also in turn, we've reached out to the provincial players to say, well, let's put our heads together and see if we can better understand the problem and think about solutions. And how can we learn and try to come up with some innovative ways of addressing drinking water system issues, and also recognizing that it could affect tourism and the visitors that come to your festival, and if drinking water issues aren't resolved. So again, that integrated approach and recognition of the importance of drinking water as part of the region and its well-being. A couple of other notable initiatives that I've looked at in the past. It's been some time, but the Southwest Joint Council was one that we identified in some work that I'd done with municipalities in Newfoundland and Labrador, looking at, there's been a lot of discussion about regional government and increased municipal service sharing. And one of the first things we did is look at, well, where are our communities already doing this? And one of the areas was this region, where there'd been a Southwest Joint Council since, I think, 2006, so 10 years now, where communities have been coming together to discuss their common interests. And at the time when we did a survey of the Joint Councils, there was 8 member communities: Town of Cape St. George, Port-au-Port West, Kippen, Stephenville Crossing, St. George's, Port aux Basques, and Burgeo. Don't know what the situation is today. I'd love to hear more about it. But the group had been talking about shared services, had worked together to close some landfill sites prior to the regional waste management, so we're leaders in that regard. Had come together to address things like problems with ATVs and transportation issues, which I did note in some of the recent media stories that the Joint Council has been active in trying to push for improvements in the bridges, I guess, the interior road network to help Burgeo with some of its access issues. So it seems to me that Joint Council is still active and still getting political clout, I guess, by coming together as a region, so communities working together, but then to try to push the provincial and federal governments and other players to pay attention to the needs of the region. So I think that's evidence of some of this collaborative multi-level governance idea, and maybe a foundation to build from further. in the region. The last initiative that's come up in some of my research was that communities on the Vaadin Peninsula were interested in the notion of learning communities. And we did a literature review in 2012-13 on learning communities, and it was an international review. But one of the great examples that we came across was from this region, which was the Community Education Network. And I won't say much about that because you're going to hear about it in a minute. But I think it really is an exemplar initiative in the region to help to foster learning and to work towards having the basis really for economic and other forms of development in the region. I understand it's been around for over 30 years in some form, 20 something more formally. But some of the notable parts or aspects of the CEN that we pointed out were that it's a holistic approach that recognizes social and economic development aims and the vital role of lifelong learning in that. A lot of focus on leadership development, inclusiveness, participation, a lot of these features that are also discussed in governance literature. And its broad strategic directions allow its ability to move in different directions according to where the community needs are. And one of them, I know in the past that CN was involved in at the time, a couple of years ago, was the Regional Housing Action Plan. So I'm not sure of the current status of that, but recognizing the importance of housing, again, which might not seem an obvious community education network initiative, but the importance of having housing to be able to move forward with education and employment. And I think it also overlaps with another area of research I'm interested in and working on is the mobile workforce and its impact on local communities and economies, and including one of the things we've heard is the housing infrastructure and availability. So again, so a number of initiatives. I think what we can do is sort of think about, well, there's some great initiatives to build off of here, but where are some of the gaps as well that might be able to be, that might need attention, and where can some of these players potentially help to come in and fill those gaps. One of the things I've been wondering about was economic development. I know there's been a gap in, I don't know if the Development Association is still active. Certainly we did lose the Red Boards a couple of years ago. The Learning Communities initiative was more based on more employment development and training orientation and some more socially oriented initiatives. Has that stepped in more into an economic development focus, or is there opportunity there to bring some players together? The Southwest Joint Council again was municipal focused, but has that branched into looking at areas of economic development opportunity? So there may be some gaps there, for example, from what I've seen, but there may be other initiatives going on that I'm just not aware of as well. So anyway, some great examples of stories I think in the region to start with.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Let's turn it over to Greg and Peter. And when you come, so Greg is coming up first.
Okay, I'm not sure if my voice has changed. It's a rainy, cold, dark night, so we're going to try to brighten up everyone. So we want to have a little draw at the end of our presentation, or probably at the end of the evening. Colin, did everyone sign their name? There's a pieces of paper up at the top. Okay, right on. Yeah. Okay, we're going to have a draw for a free day pass at our ski trails and free equipment rentals. So we'll be doing that after the draw. What did I say? Okay. Okay. This particular, this is our website actually, and the reason why I brought this with us as a guideline is, if you see here in the initial picture, there's the two tracks right over here to the left and the right. For those people that are unexperienced skiers, there's two ways to ski. You can get in this track or this track right here and classic ski, or you can go right in the middle, where my cursor is going back and forth, and you could skate ski. So there's two methods to ski, classic or skate. Another thing too about the Whaleback Ski Club is we have a website developed, but communication is a big thing with our club. And if you see, there's regular whaleback times, we call them. It's it comes out as regular as this, and here they are for the whole year. And if we just click on, um, let me just go back and click on one of the ones in March, probably the March 21st. I wonder what we had to say in the Whaleback Times. Well, Jackrabbit final session, the Piercy Pirouet trophy. Apparently, he got mislaid, but we found it. Kenny's tip. Our groomer driver does an excellent job, so we always throw in a tip at the end of the year. The chalet schedule. One of the things about our ski club is that volunteers. The club runs by many volunteers. So just to note that our chalet schedule concludes on I guess Holy Thursday last year. We had one of our skiers go to the nationals, and wood cutting, wood removal, and getting ready to touch up some bridges. A little bit of news there. So just let you know that communication is a big thing in our ski club. Now that didn't go back. Let's hit this tab right on. Thank you, Mike. My God. Moving right along, a little bit about us and the club overview. Just a little bit of news here. Our club, as you see, we're almost approaching 50 years of existence in 2018. And this third paragraph there, the primary goal of the club is to promote fun, fitness, and wellness throughout the winter activities. Okay, it offers junior developmental programs. I mentioned Jackrabbit. And of course, we have certified leaders to run that and so on. But just to let you know that what we're all about is promote fun, fitness, and wellness throughout the winter. We also have, as I should mention earlier, we have, and we encourage membership for people who have snowshoes. As well, we have a biathlon beers program. The 708, the Stephen Miller cadets use our facilities. And just to mention, we only have 3 paid staff and over 50 volunteers. And at the end of the year, we have a volunteer appreciation evening. Let me see about us. Well, you can just see the executive. Peter's here tonight, but here's our 2016 executive. And that's the crew that helps run the show. And just going back again about us. We have one sponsor, Emira, for the last 3 years has sponsored our ski club. Membership and programs. Now I'm going to turn things over to Peter here now to talk about, well, I'll just put up our membership fees. Peter, I'm not sure if you want to jump in here. Did you want to talk about membership? Yeah, sure. Okay. Now, if I can get out of this.
Thanks, Greg. Good evening, everybody. One of the things that we're very proud of with regards to our ski club is that we have a very large membership. When you take into account that Stephenville, although it's a fairly large rural town, I mean, we are not a large urban area. But our membership is quite extensive. It varies from year to year, obviously, but it ranges from about 300. In 1 year, a few years ago, got up to 441. And we have family memberships, individual adult memberships, and you can see from up there. And the rates that we charge for membership are extremely reasonable because once you join, you can ski every day if you want. And particularly, we go out of our way to ensure that fees for family memberships are really reasonable. If you were to compare the fees that we charge with, say, the ski club in Corner Brook, we're really significantly lower. And I think as a consequence of that, plus the fact that our trails are wonderful, that we have lots of snow in the winter, it comes pretty early and it stays pretty late. Last year, Greg, if I'm not mistaken, people skied well into late April, maybe even early May. It's a wonderful facility. In fact, I tell people that the Whaleback ski trails are a treasure in this particular area. And to even highlight that even more, we have some of our club members who have competed internationally in cross-country ski racing. They have gone to Europe, various countries in Europe. They've been to Italy. They've been to the Scandinavian countries. They've been to Russia. They've competed in the United States. They are well reputed as skiers. They're very experienced, and they have said that the whaleback ski trails are fantastic, and that if Stephenville had enough hotel capacity, the Whaleback Ski Club could host international events. That's how good the facility is, and we're very, very proud of that. And as Greg has said, we only have 3 paid employees, but we have 50 or so volunteers who do tremendous work. In fact, Greg was out with the group today. We'll be out again on Thursday. And we're very thankful for them, because if it wasn't for all the volunteer work that we have done on an annual basis, the costs that you would see here would be significantly higher. Because if we had to go out and pay people to do the work, we would have to recover those costs through fees, membership fees. Also, one of the major highlights of our membership is that we have an extremely successful jackrabbit ski program, which is for kids to teach them how to ski. It's a fantastic program. Once again, membership in that varies from year to year, but it's always over 40 children. It goes up sometimes to 75, almost 80. And that's an extremely good program. Parents are very appreciative of that, and we're very, very proud of that program as well. And hopefully this year our membership will be even higher than it was last year. And that very often depends upon how early the snow comes. If you have a really early snowfall, you get a lot of people coming in right away. If the snow is a little bit later, maybe after Christmas, it takes a little bit longer to get our membership in. But we're anticipating another very, very successful year, and we're very proud of what we offer. And if you talk to anyone who is a member of our ski club, they say it's a fantastic thing to be a member of, and it's a highlight of their winter. So Greg, I can give it back to you.
I should add that we do have a 2.5 kilometer lit trail, and we have night skiing Monday to Friday evenings. The 2016 season, this, of course, tonight is all a reflection of last year. We have many events going on. We had 2 of our members celebrate their 80th birthday. So we had Earl Hunt's birthday, as well as oh my God, who else did we celebrate? It slips through your mind.
Wasn't Peter, was it?
No, it wasn't Peter. It was Francis Bourgeois. But we had all kinds of pictures taken, and these are people skiing in. Here's a picture of Don's Den right here, and there's actually the fellow who coordinated, Don Cormier. That's what we call it, Don's Den. And you see people skiing in and having a bite to eat, a bowl of soup, and I'll enlarge the next group of pictures, I guess. But I'll enlarge this one, and there's a picture of our sign that goes over Don's Den, done by Esther, actually. Okay, now let's see if I can. Okay, oh no, not oh no, look what's showing, but oh no, what did I do? Let me. Don't trip up. Oh, I was afraid of doing that.
That's okay, we're all good.
I know. Oh, you got it. My God,
Bam.
how quick and all. Thank you very much for bailing me out of that. I wonder if I should, maybe the 2016 is kind of history, but we have a club photographer, and God bless her. Hopefully she should continue next year. But pictures of the Jackrabbit program, now if I go on this, will I be able to, to some of the children with the Jackrabbit program. And Peter did mention about our Jackrabbit program, but what we have is a playground set up, and it's all kinds of activities. And Vanessa, I think you're in one of these pictures. I think you're in one of these pictures, Vanessa. Not the Jackrabbit, but there's pictures of you in here somewhere. But anyway. Right on. And of course, we hold several races throughout the year. In fact, last year we hosted the 2016 provincial marathon, and this year we're hosting it again. And it's a great event, actually. You can ski 5 kilometers, 11, 21 if you're very brave, 42 Ks. And I mentioned volunteers. Well, here's our volunteer schedule. Basically, there's an hour and 50-minute shifts, 1 day a week. And this is how our chalet is run from 11 o'clock in the morning to about 4-ish. And after 4, one of our paid employees takes over. Now, let's hope I can move on. The trails. Here's our trails. Here's an important item. Daily, I will say daily, one of our executive members, you can see trail report for April 11th, April 9th and 10th, April the 8th, due to mild weather, not able to groom. So anyone wanting to ski our trails can go on this site and see what conditions of the trails are and what's being groomed for that particular day. So it's a nice little feature for members. And I'll finish off, I guess, my portion with the trail. There's our trail map and distances. The distances are all down below here. But but overall, from where our chalet is right here to probably right here as a direct line is only probably 4 to 5 Ks. And the whole park is within 4 or 5 Ks. The trails, there's no distance. If you're skiing right along here, you can see the person over here. And so it's not too bad. I mean, you're not lost. You're not out in the woods, gone and don't see them when you're always running around, or not running around, skiing by people as you ski. Okay, that's about it. I didn't want to be too long, and I don't think I left out anything, did I, Peter? Just an overview of our club. But more importantly, did everyone get their name on that piece of paper? Because I have a day pass and a free rentals giveaway. Colin, we're going to do that after, are we? Okay, not a problem. A day. Did I say years?
Thank you very much, Greg and Peter. And now we'll turn it over to Mark Felix.
Thank you, Mike. I guess I've been around for a little while, community economic development. When I started in the early 80s and most of the mid 90s, social and economic development was pretty well joined. You didn't go into a community to look for economic development or social. You went in looking for both. And as we became more statistical oriented in government in the early 2000s, people started to separate very much. And at one point, we actually had social and economic development coming to a point where we almost had integration. And it was almost there in the late 90s. And then suddenly it was, nope, we're going to have economic development, it's going to work over here, and social development stuff is going to stay over there. And the reason for that is because in economics, it's pretty simple. If I bring in a project and I got $100,000 of government money and I leverage $500,000 of COLA money, it's $600,000 and it's X number of jobs. So you can fill in all the nice statistical stuff, no problem. Everybody's happy. It gets sent up to higher and higher is happy. In social development, how does a preschool program that starts in Lourdes have an economic impact? It's very intangible. But nobody sees the economic impact that 70% of the students were dropouts in that community. And that's what started Community Education Network over 30 years ago. I was a development coordinator, young, full of energy, wanted to do things different. The president of the association was the principal at Lowell School, who knew all his students weren't making it to high school. And when we traced it with the school board superintendent, we found out a high school dropout rate of 60%. And we said, wow, that's not acceptable. And right away, we formed the first partnership to tackle that one problem. But nobody could manage that because it took 17 years for us to turn that around. Today, there's probably a 20% dropout rate versus a 70. And what does that mean if you calculate? And I'm going to try to show some examples of how social enterprise can actually do something. And the group I'm going to choose is Community Education Network because that's the one agency that I stayed with for the 30 years. So it celebrates 25 years this year as an incorporated body. And when you look at business stats, because we just came out of Small Business Week, I mean, 30% of businesses don't make it to the first 2 years. 50% don't see 5 years. So we got, out of 25 years, if I got to look through my portfolio and ask myself how many businesses that I was involved with over the 30-year career that I had, how many are still here today, it's a very small percentage. I figure it's around 15%. So because of that, I wanted to talk about the Community Education Network, because everybody used to keep asking me, what are you still fooling with that for, Mark? We're in economic development. We're in crunching economic development stuff. And I would say it's because it's the biggest file I have. And in the early 80s, when government had lots of money for programming and we weren't facing big deficits, we were doing $2.5 to $3.5 million as a social enterprise, hiring in excess of 200 people, doing good social economic development work in this region. Then as budgets started to get smaller and budgets started to shrink, we ended up having to cut back. But I'll go through some numbers. But just to give you the vision of the Community Education Network is to make a positive difference in people's lives. Pretty straightforward of what we're trying to do. Our mission is to create a culture of lifelong learning which promotes personal enrichment in healthy, sustainable communities. Our principles, and long before any federal or provincial or municipal government thought all these things were good, 30 years ago we knew they weren't good, they were critical. Self-determination, self-help, maximum use of our resources, leadership development, inclusiveness, lifelong learning, community involvement in schools, integrated service delivery, localization, community capacity building, citizenship engagement, institutional responsiveness, and participatory processes. And our network, we form a network, and our network is a collaboration with networks of governments, agencies, community agencies, to meet identified community needs and facilitate a coordinated approach to service delivery. And that's what we were 30 years ago. And now governments do this when they're forced to. There's no money. We were doing it when there was lots of money, and we were able to maximize the dollar. And just to give you an example of how we maximize, even in today's tight economy, we went down to an operating core budget of $60,000. And this year, we will have generated $1.5 million in programming at the Community Education Network. We currently have 24 staff employed. We're working with 9 current programs. And if I point out the 1.5 million, 40% of that is federal money. That comes from Ottawa. That would never find its way to a little area in Newfoundland that we have made networks and done a national level, recognized at the national level. We're able to garnish them kind of programs in our community. And when I talk about economics, so when people want to get to the economic stuff, I say, well, here's how it works. If we do $1.5 million and 40% of it's federal money, that means there's around $600,000 there. If I multiply that by a ratio of 3 to 1, which is what we do when a tourist comes to the province, the economic spin-off is 3 to 1, that's worth $1.8 million, just the federal money. Then if I take the provincial money at $900,000, which is dollars that was already here in the province, you multiply that by 1.5, which is a normal standard calculator, that's 1.4 million. So for $60,000 of core funding, we're able to generate $3.2 million worth of economic development, direct and indirect. Now the social benefits, we ask ourselves the social benefits, because that's the intangible stuff that people can't measure. So I say, so how important is it to get someone a preschool program, so now they go to school in kindergarten, they know the colors, they know how to count, they feel more welcome, and they're not so far behind everybody else. Everybody's on a level playing field. And when we started this 30 years ago, you know, some kids never had crayons in their school, in their homes. That's where we were 30 years ago. So just to give you some quick examples, if we can keep one male or female out of a prison term for 25 years, we'll save $875,000. Now, I was told today my numbers were wrong because I was using $35,000 a year, and someone said, no, it's 60 now. So that's almost 1.1 million. If we take a person who drops out of school, becomes a single mother and supporting 2 children on income support for 45 to 75 years, that's a cost of $648,000, one person. So when government, and now you see the calculator, you know, the Board of Trade's got this calculator with the death. And the first thing after that was, well, government can't afford the social programs. No, I would say government can't afford not to, because that calculator is ratcheting up. I'd like to have the other calculator on the side that shows when you don't do social programs and integration and interventions, what that would be. And the numbers I'm using, that calculator would just pound out the other one way by far. So that's just to give you some examples of why I stayed with the Community Education Network. When it celebrated its 20th anniversary, I almost got out then. I said, okay, 20 years is enough. Somebody else can come in here. And I stayed on, and then suddenly all the cuts start coming. So I was part of the restructuring process. And it was a lot of bawling, a lot of tears in an office. As a volunteer, it was a tough couple of years trying to get to that. But we had to get through it, and we had to become more of a social enterprise. We had to figure out ways to generate our revenue so we could survive. And so here's some of the objectives we had, and probably this is something that government agencies could look at, because they're struggling now with the same things we struggled with 5 years ago. So our first goal was to maintain decentralized service delivery where financially practical. Maintain frontline service delivery to ensure activities were not reduced or programs eliminated. Maintain a team approach to program delivery. Maintain flexibility in the job descriptions so that networking integrated service delivery was maximized. And maintain maximum use of resources for effective program delivery. And here's how we achieved that. We achieved it in 3 different ways. The first thing is we restructured at the management level, reducing lead management positions, because we had to, which allowed 3 core staff then to manage more programs by sharing administration, financial, and leadership for them programs. And what that allowed us to do then was maintain frontline program positions. So we restructured positions within areas so that instead of saying, okay, we're going to just have one area served, we can't serve this area, we took this position and made it half-time. So we took 20 hours from this position and put it over here, so we covered a broader region, and the programs were able to cover more of the communities. And then our volunteer executive positions had to step up a bit more, because now we were asking staff to do more, so the volunteers had to do more, and we did that for a period of time. And after all this organization, I'm pleased to report that CEN, again, is once in a very solid foundation. We have and we're looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years. On Saturday, the 5th of November, we'll be celebrating our 25th anniversary. And we will look forward, hopefully, to the next 25 years. And the reason I wanted to talk about CEN as a social enterprise is because it is an economic generator in this area. And the programs and services that we do from when I got a program to hand out, but the simplest program, the first one, I never forget, because we had to get workers on an old make work project, you probably remember them, to convince them to build the children's furniture for the Lord's preschool. And I had to call in to get approval, and I knew I wasn't going to get it. That was a given. I was young, but I wasn't naive. So I said to the foreman, do it. Of course, then we had a site visit. 3/4 of the way through, the manager from the program showed up and said, what's going on here? I said, well, they got a bit of downtime and they're building these tables and chairs for a preschool program. And he almost lost it, right? He almost lost it. But when the preschool program got set up, I brought him back to see the results of that and why he took so much pride in the furniture, because their uncle had built it and their grandfathers had built it. And it was just a great thing for the community. So that's how we started with the preschool. And to me, there's a lot of other programs we do with Power Up. We got involved in adult education and the housing program you mentioned earlier. We have a proposal in now to government to move that initiative forward. We still have a housing coordinator that's placing people, but we're actually looking for a structure to work from, and that hopefully will come. So I look forward to any other questions. There are some examples of some of the other stuff for networking, like the Tourism Southwest group, that I'm sure will come up in the discussion. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. So I'll ask the 4 presenters to just come up to the front. We don't have any chairs, but if you don't mind standing for a few minutes while we have the discussion, so it might make it a bit easier for us to engage in the discussion. I was remiss earlier not to acknowledge that we have an MHA with us, John Finn, who is the MHA for, is it Stephenville District? Stephenville Port District. Welcome, John. Nice to have you here. So we've had 3 great presentations that gave 3 interesting perspectives on regional development. And we'll call it regional development, as according to what Mark was saying, because it's very hard to separate what makes a region successful. It's difficult to divide it between economic and social. And Kelly gave us kind of a theoretical framework within which to look at how development can occur in a region. And then we had a great example of one particular activity that not only helps people keep healthy and all that, but it's also, if you want to attract business to a region, having activities like this raises the quality of life and makes the region more attractive. So it is a very important contributor to the local economy, not just for the money it generates, but also for the environment that it creates. So we have a wireless microphone that Taylor is going to circulate around the room. If you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand. Taylor will get it over to you, and Taylor will also monitor the see if any questions or comments come in on the website, and then we'll read those as well. And then let's engage in a discussion. So yes, Colin.
I guess this is a question for the entire panel, and it kind of relates because Kelly has some work involved with councils and so on and so forth. One of the things that keeps popping up in my, I guess, profession as an economic development professional is succession planning. And what I've found over the years is that it's not just a business or a commercial concern. It's also a concern for community groups, whether they're involved with recreation or multi-levels of government or the type of work that the Community Education Network does. So I guess my question is, how does your organization or how does your work approach the idea of succession planning in rural areas, considering that there's an aging population and less volunteers and less civic engagement for the most part?
And I'm going to circulate this microphone for you two gentlemen who don't have a lapel mic.
Okay, thank you. With regards to the Whaleback Nordic Ski Club, one of the things that we've been doing over the last several years in order to ensure that the organization continues as a success into the future is that we've been encouraging younger people to come into our executive and our executive positions to help out as volunteers, etc. And the way that our membership is currently structured, it's very, very healthy because, as I pointed out, when we look at our fee structures, we've gone out of our way over the years to ensure, for example, that families with young children can join our club at very, very reasonable rates. So as a consequence of that, we have a good base of young people in our club. And these people stay with our club usually for many, many years. And very often they come back into club as young adults. And many of them in the last several years have taken on leadership roles. So we feel very secure that on a go-forward basis, our organization is going to continue to be successful. Greg, if you want to add to that or not?
No, the only thing I'd like to add is that what we find is that like our chalet is probably not the top-notch chalet in Eastern Canada, but our trails, we put a lot of energy into trails development, and they're like this carpet. And with good trails, we find people keep coming, young and old.
Yeah, well, I see it in a lot of areas. Let's start with the fishing industry, right? So most fishermen told their sons to get an education and get a better job and sent them out west. And now that they're getting ready to say, okay, I'm 65, 67, it's time for me to hang up the hat and I'm going to stay home. It's hard to get Billy or Mary or whoever to come back to the fishing enterprise now. We look at the farming entities in our region. I mean, we have very few new entrants. And farmers now are getting older. The average age, I think, in this area is hitting close to 60. And what is going to be the succession plan for that industry? With our business clients, we do an annual follow-up with the clients that government supports now. And in that follow-up, we talk about succession planning, and we try to talk people, you know, what are you going to do? What do you got? What insurance? First of all, let's start with insurance. What insurance do you have in place in case something happens to you when they're the main person? The voluntary sector, the Small Business Week in this area usually puts in succession planning as one of the topics for people to come to the boardroom to talk about. So there's help that way. I know the Francophone Association is trying to create some activity around new farmers, new entrants. So it's a big issue in rural Newfoundland right now because of the aging population. Volunteers are getting tired. More likely, most of them need to get sick first. And when they get sick, they suddenly realize, I can't do all this anymore, so they burn out a bit more. And what happens then, who's going to take over? So at the Community Education Network, that's why I kept saying at 20 I was going to get out, and it's 25 now, and I'm not out yet. But there is a plan to, we've structured our bylaws to allow more youth to try to get involved with the organization. So it's, and in succession planning with your employees, you had to do the same thing. Right now, we got 3 core people as a team. So we keep asking, okay, what is your plan? Everybody going to be around for the next 3 years? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good. And if something comes up and someone's trying to leave, then we have to try to recruit somebody. And we were very innovative. And that's another thing at CEN that's different. It's a different world. I work with government, structured, hierarchical, and I work as a volunteer with CEN, and it's very more like the regional thing you put up, and it's very flat oriented, and it's a team approach. I give you an example. We wanted to get someone, because we had 3 people working in our bookkeeping. We couldn't afford 3, so we tried to find one of them to take on all the jobs, and he wouldn't do it. None of them had the confidence, and they didn't feel comfortable enough taking on. So when we advertised for the position, the person we wanted was already working, and they committed to that organization. So what we did is I went to that organization and said, listen, you only got 4 more months for this person, and we got hopefully 5 years. You know they're a good employee, and I know you don't want to give them up. Can we cost share them? Can you have them for 3 days, and we take them for 2, and if you got an emergency, I'll send them back to you to hold that person so we get the right person. So we did that to get us in. So you got to fill key positions, but succession planning is going to be a struggle.
I just wanted to say that I think post-secondary institutions are key partners in this, along with many of these things. So, and I know CN has worked with the college. I remember hearing that in some of our discussions quite a bit on different programs. And I think we have a role at the university as well. I know at Grenfell, in our environmental policy program, we have an internship program, and I have Tunde series sort of looking around for some internship opportunities. So we have students who are keen to work in communities on projects. Our business program has moved to more of an experiential learning approach where business students are expected to do projects in collaboration with community organizations or local businesses. So hopefully it might inspire students to have an idea where they're going to go out after their education program and work in our communities, or to get positions as young people coming out of educational institutions in our local organizations. So I think more of that experiential learning, practicums, co-ops, applied courses, that kind of thing in our institutions can help with that too.
Economic growth depends on 2 things. One depends on population growth. The more people you have in your region, the more they'll buy, the more they'll consume, right? So you get economic activity that way. And the other one is productivity, being able to do more things better, faster, etc. If we look at the population growth for a moment, we have one of the lowest birth rates in the world, never mind in Canada, in the world. And so we need to bring people in. We're not having enough children ourselves, so we need to bring people in to keep our economy going. So that brings in the issue of immigration. And I'll just make the point, because I think one of the things that's coming out here tonight is that the difficulty in separating economic from social. If we bring workers in from outside and they don't like it here for whatever reason, they're going to move on. And so maybe I'll just get your thoughts of the panel in terms of immigration. What could we be doing more in this province, especially in rural areas? I think St. John's is okay, but in terms of rural areas, what could we be doing more of or less of, if it's harmful, in order to bring more people in and to keep them? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think we got to get strategic. We're looking at rural communities. So let's take Basin George South as an example, as a farming entity out there, as a major strength with probably difficulty in finding current workers, very little succession planning amongst the core farmers that are there. So if you got strategic, and then you could go work with the communities, because the communities got to be more welcoming, and you got to be able to have a plan so that you just don't send 5 immigrants to Basin George South and they land there with their bags and say, we're here to work on a farm. If it was integrated and it was focused and strategic, I think it could work, because then you could have, and I believe that there's the largest dairy operation in St. David's in Eastern Canada is actually using the immigration plan to bring people in. And
I heard it's the 2nd largest dairy farm in Canada.
Yes.
In St. David's.
Yeah. So they've been able to successfully do that. So I think that's the way you could do it, if you could strategically do it, and then bring in a core. You got to bring in a core. You can't bring in, like, you got to bring in, to me, almost like a mini community within a community, so that they get comfortable within themselves, and the community gets integrated really quickly. And it can happen in rural Newfoundland because we're very open-minded and we're always welcoming. We'll take, like, tourists love coming to Newfoundland because it costs us nothing, and you get tea and coffee everywhere and a chat, right? So it can be done, but it got to be strategically focused.
Anyone else with thoughts on immigration?
Just somehow trying to match people that are interested with the opportunities that are available. I think like we struggle at the university that a lot of in our program, the majority of the students are international, and many of them want to stay, but then the job opportunities aren't available at the end of the program. So and then there's immigration policy issues as well. But somehow we need to do a better job of we're bringing students from around the world into our institutions, but then not able somehow to place them, even though we supposedly have labor.
Sure.
The types of jobs that are available maybe not the right fit with the types of students we're bringing in, but I think there's more to it than that. I think somehow we need to be working on that maybe throughout the educational process, but somehow a better fit between those that are interested in coming and staying and the opportunities that are out there.
Greg and Peter, as longtime residents of the region, any thoughts in terms of is your community receptive to immigrants? Is it ready to receive them? What are some of the things that you do to help them integrate them?
Well, as the speakers were expounding on that, I was thinking that over the last several years at our ski club, we have attracted members who were immigrants. The ones I think of first are individuals who were working in the medical area in the region, in the hospital or as doctors and physicians. But they were certainly welcomed in our communities from what I saw, and several of them did join our ski club, and they certainly learned to enjoy winter because they came from areas of the world where they didn't have the snow that we have and the lengthy winter that we have. So becoming members of our ski club, I think, played a key role, a positive role in making them feel quite welcome in the area.
I just think the thing, and maybe they're being humble, but I just think the Whaleback Nordic Ski Club is a great example of a feeling, and it's really hard to kind of put that into words. But what they've created there over the number of years is it's an open door, it's welcoming, it's very affordable, and it's fun. It's not a pretentious place, and again, the clubhouse isn't the best in the world, as you said, but at the same time, it's warm, it's welcoming. And it's what you need after a good ski. So I just think I commend yourselves, of course, as well as the rest of the number of members and volunteers. You guys have done a great job over the past. Creating that feeling, I think, in a club, and I think it's a hard thing to express.
I'd like to add that I think we lack some services, and it's not necessarily us as a community, but I've recently taken on tutoring English to immigrants, and it's actually I'm tutoring one, but there's no services for his son to learn English. So this is a gentleman who would like to start a business in the region, doesn't speak English, needs to learn English in order to work in our region and start a business in our region. Yes. Yeah. And yeah, there's really no services for his son. So I enjoy his son coming along, and his son is involved, but really he's not registered, and there's no programming for him if I was available or didn't want to teach his son, for example. And so there you go. And his wife and other children are considering coming, but it's when there's a lack of services, it's a challenge for a family like theirs to make.
Kelly, you put up a slide at the beginning around your theoretical framework and talked about new regionalism. And one of the, as you said, a big part of the shift from the 90s and 2000s was very much about the local and the need to focus more on the local. And I wonder if you could, given background, if you could speak a little bit to the multiple scales and the need to not get too focused on the local, which is also important, and sometimes we lose sight of. Innovation is largely about new ideas. A lot of those come from outside the region, and Mark mentioned in particular about funding and seeking funding externally. I think that in some ways points to that externally focused, the need to be like that. In a recent conversation with some research that was done in Halifax, they talked about the fact that Atlantic Canada as a whole is completely lacks a global footprint. And this was Halifax and this was Atlantic Canada. And when we think about rural places and rural Newfoundland, I think that's kind of heightened in our need to try and focus away from, while sort of building the local connections, to look beyond that is important.
Yeah, and it was one of the bigger barriers that we found in looking at innovation in the Northern Peninsula, for example, that people were pretty well connected to each other, but outside of the Northern Peninsula, a little bit to St. John's, Corner Brook, but beyond that, not that there aren't individuals who are globally connected, but by and large people aren't. And that was one of the another feature of CEN is I think that you're part of at least of national networks of learning initiatives, which you're getting ideas from, and I'm sure that that's contributing to your ability to bring in some of those some of those funding sources that other organizations in the province aren't accessing because you're spending time. And it's hard, you hear businesses say it's hard for us to get to stop sort of working in the business to work on the business, or to invest in training or R&D and looking for other ideas. So I think that both the nonprofit sector and the business sector in our province and in our rural communities probably particularly are suffering from that. But all of the literature and research suggests that those investments in looking outside, looking for new innovative ideas, building networks and connections pay off. But we're not doing enough of it, certainly.
And of course, having more immigrants in a region, these people bring connections to their home countries, and hopefully those countries want to buy what we have to offer. So immigration plays that role as well.
Yeah, and we can take advantage of the connections we do have, whether it's through people who have moved to the province or through our business enterprises that are operating globally. We do have some international businesses in rural regions and resource sectors, for example. That's one of the things we talked about are there ways to capitalize somehow on those global connections through those global resource companies with bridging into other kinds of sectors or areas.
The other thing, so increasing population is one way to get economic growth. The other one is creating things that other people want, right? So that's the whole entrepreneurship thing. So I think we should be careful to divide entrepreneurship into two areas. First, there are personal services that you offer, whether in healthcare or barbering or things that have to be offered locally. And there's never any shortage of those kinds of entrepreneurs, but it's those entrepreneurs that have something that others will want to buy from us, right? I just want to throw this out to you. We're near the water. We know the water better than anybody else in this province. All we're doing so far out of it is taking fish out and selling it without being a whole lot of processing. How can we be more creative in terms of extracting value from what is around us and being able to sell it so that other people will want to buy it? And I'd throw this question at the audience as well. This is a question that the whole world is grappling with. So if the ID is in here somewhere, I'd be really interested in hearing it. So how do we get more creative, especially in rural areas? There's as much to discover in rural areas as there is in urban. What's the secret for getting that thing, that company started here that other people want?
Well, again, it's got to be a collaborative approach. And I want to use an example because it points right to that. I remember a company in Ramia that developed a kelp capsule. I don't know if anybody remembered that years ago, but they harvested kelp and they dried it and they powdered it and they got it to a capsule. And they started to grow their sales, and it was great for anybody who had thyroid problems because it had iodine and all that. And they were really ready to launch and take off. And suddenly, when they got to a point where they needed the Health Inspection Agency certification, suddenly they had too much iodine in that capsule. And it couldn't be marketed that way. And the company was a small company. It didn't have so at the beginning, had it had enough innovative research that could have been brought to them first, where they could have had the proper amounts, they might have been able to carry on. But they couldn't because they didn't have it, and they did what they did. They dried the kelp, they pounded it down to powder, and they put it in a capsule. And when they wanted to get to the next level, because sales had to go up, and someone would have to say, well, how is that certified? Oh, we got to go certification. And when they went in, and then the real scientists started to study it, they said, oh, wait a minute, there's too much iodine here. But there's people that bought that capsule and would die to say it was great for paralysis, it was great for thyroids, because the reason it was because it had all that extra iodine. But to me, that's what would need to happen. Like in rural Newfoundland, very seldom are you going to find the scientific, innovative research required that would be at the MUN's facilities and the College of the North Atlantics. Somehow we need to figure out how you outreach that support to rural areas to study, like in farming, for example, there's all kinds of projects going on in farming. Well, how does the research tie in with all that? And we got all kinds of farmland, we got all kinds of ocean. Like, how do you extract all that? But to me, if we don't start with getting the research expertise out first to say what, then it starts, but it stops very quickly.
In this area, is broadband internet access an issue? Or I know in some areas the province is better than others. So I've been hearing increasingly about businesses that are selling, all kinds of things off the internet from our rural communities, which is exciting in terms of the market potential. But sometimes it's limited by the infrastructure too. And I don't know if that's much of a concern.
There's some,
Wendy's working on the Port Peninsula,
Yes.
which is
there's some challenges.
Yeah.
I think we're 80%, 20%.
The community of mainland, for example, they have internet access, but it's very, very weak. So you might have great internet access for 10 minutes, then it might go down. Then it might come up. Then it might be slow.
If you're trying to make a living at that.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, I know, for example, some people who would stay at school after to communicate with family who are away because the internet access at their home is not reliable enough as what it is at the school. Yes, the school does. And as for cell phone reception, which would also be important, say for fishermen out on the water or for businesses to accept phone calls and not be restricted to their home, we don't have cell phone reception whatsoever in mainland and Three Rock Cove. So as soon as you go over that mountain in out of Cape St. George going towards mainland, you lose that service.
It is a sort of basic infrastructure in today's economy.
Yes, however, Bell Alliant is willing to provide us cell phone reception, for example, if we come up with $670,000. The ACOA and other funding agencies do not look at cell phone reception to give funding. They would look at high-speed internet. However, they're not looking at regions who have it,
Poor,
have poor service. So that's kind of where we stand right now with regards to cell phone and high-speed internet.
And you now have phone companies actually saying to their own customers, get rid of the landlines and go to the cell phone. Those ads are starting to come out now. So we're going to be stuck behind unless we can get cellular service. Gentlemen, any thoughts on entrepreneurship?
Yeah, listening intently to what was being said, and I have not been involved in economic development per se, but I read a little bit about it when I see it in the media. And one of the things that sticks in my mind is that in order for economic development to occur in an area like ours, for example, on a small scale, in small rural communities, there has to be something unique that's available, that's there now, or something unique has to be developed, as you were referring to. But it has to be something that other areas don't have. And I'm thinking, as people were talking, I was thinking about the unique geology we have out here, for example, on the Port Peninsula. We have large deposits of fossils in areas. That type of uniqueness does draw people in, for example. And in terms of economic development and tourism particularly, a unique thing like that, the unique geology, the unique fossil deposits, for example, could be something that could be zeroed in on. In fact, there was something in the media about that just a couple of weeks ago that I saw. It was nice to see it brought up, but it has to be something unique. And when it is unique, then I think you've got a solid base to begin with. But for small rural communities to get into economic development and have to compete with others that already have existing products or existing attractions is very, very difficult. It's got to be something unique to the area, and we've got that in this area.
Yeah. And the geology piece, the Tourism Southwest is a regional tourism group, just finished printing a geology guide to Bay St. George. So Yeah, so that piece is ongoing.
One thing that regions can do to develop their economy is to attract talented people. And we've got lots of examples of that here in this province. For example, in Trinity, Donna Butt, artistic director for a theater company, goes and visits Trinity and thinks, oh, this would be a nice backdrop for a theater pageant. Moves to Trinity, develops an economy around theater. You have writers who have gone to the Eastport Peninsula, Grossmore National Park, and said, this would be a great place for a literary festival. And they start a literary festival. We have biologists at Memorial who've gone to a couple of different communities and said, we'll start an aquarium. So you mentioned earlier about post-secondary institutions playing a role in economic development. One of the roles they can play is attract somebody who's smart to your region, get them to like your region, and get them to identify, the unique things that you have, and get them to develop it. And that's so. There's a couple of movies. The movie The Grand Seduction was kind of based around that, right? So bring smart people to your region, treat them well, make them feel at home, get them to develop their passion in your region. And it could be geology, it could be anything.
Where you live, Mike?
Where do I live?
Yeah, you want to move?
Yeah.
I said talented people.
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up to what you were saying. I think if within a region, communities come together, and I just think of Grossmore National Park, and of course they got federal funding and federal backing, but when a region comes behind a project and says, hey, we're known for this, or when a region speaks together behind whether it's tourism or something else, then of course the spin-offs and the businesses and the opportunities can come from that. But it does take cooperation. That's my only thought.
One of the other unique things this region really has is the cultural diversity. I mean, the Francophone communities, the Mi'kmaq communities, and so I think the richness of that cultural mix compared to in the province is I don't know, where I'm sure you've been talking a lot about where to go with that, but
Yeah, there is, and you're right. There's not too many places in the province where you will find three cultures. 'Cause
No.
we also would have the American
as well as the
culture left behind from the base,
immigrant cultures
and
as
then
well.
and the immigrants as well.
Yeah.
So there is three groups working separately. That's hopefully going to come together to make Bay St. George a cultural destination. That's the
Great.
goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See.
I just want to say, I think to add to what Mark, like you were saying about the culture, we have the beauty. I went to Cape Breton University for a couple of years and always heard about how beautiful it was, and it is. It's gorgeous. And then being away from home and coming back, and I drive through Bay St. George South, where my mom is from, and realizing we have just as beautiful, if not more so. And so we have that to add to what, right, that we could certainly market more.
And beauty is monetizable, commercializable, right? It can be a movie set. It can be a scene for painting. It could be any number of things, right? So even scenic beauty is useful.
Products that are marketed based on that somehow.
Yeah.
Like, the branding, I guess, the various products around that.
And also purity of environment is also an added thing these days, where the world is getting more and more polluted. If you can position yourself as a kind of a place that's pure, and safe, that's also good. Go ahead. When we think of innovation, we think mostly about product innovations, technologies and things like that. But you mentioned the three cultures. When I moved to Newfoundland in 1980, Aboriginal people in this province didn't have the best reputation. And we look today, you took us to the what was the community you took us to?
St. George's.
St. George's, and see the difference in approach that is now, the difference in attitude, the difference in collaboration, cooperation, the pride of a culture coming back to life. Holy cow, that is absolutely powerful. And then you look at the rest of the world where social capital is really, look at Syria, look at a lot of other places where social capital is really lacking. And here we're developing it, maybe that's exportable. Maybe some of the people who live here can keep living here, but export that knowledge, to other places that need it. I mean, not every innovation needs to be technological. I'm sure there's way more we can talk about, but maybe this is possibly a a nice place to finish it off. Just got a couple of comments here. Oh, the Harris Center is organizing a day-long session tomorrow at the Days Inn. I invite you all to come. We've got about 50 or 60 people signed up to attend. It's a workshop where we will look at issues like what we've been talking about tonight, regional development, but also specifically about how Memorial University can help this region achieve some of its objectives. It's free of charge. It starts with a complimentary breakfast at 8 o'clock. We start the workshop at 9. We're going to finish at 4 because we'll be exhausted, because even though we're not doing anything physical, we're exercising our brains. We've got 3 breakout groups: tourism development, community partnerships, and youth employment and engagement.
Falls nicely on our discussion.
Exactly. So welcome you to attend. Even if you haven't signed up, please join us at the Days Inn, starting at 8 for breakfast and 9. I want to give thanks to the Bay St. George campus of the College of the North Atlantic for providing us with meeting space tonight. I want to thank the organizing committee for tonight's forum and tomorrow's workshop, who've had several meetings to organize this, so thank you, all of them. Many of them are volunteers from different organizations. I want to thank the staff of the Harris Center for the organization of this event, in particular, Colin Heffernan, Taylor Stocks, Zarin White, and Jennifer McVeigh back at the office. I want to thank our panelists, Dr. Kelly Vaadin, Greg Noonan, Peter Sutherland, and Mark Felix. And I want to thank you, the audience, for taking the time out of your schedule and coming here and engaging in a discussion with us. We have a prize to be drawn. Why don't we ask Kelly to close her eyes and.
I do. So we need
okay. Well, I don't. I couldn't.
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead, Mike.
I could.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
He's probably got a membership for the day.
No,
Ms. Brake, you've just won a day's free pass to the whale back ski club. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you at the next one.
For a day this winter anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I will. I will. Yeah. Thanks. Nice to hear about your. Amazing. Thanks.